Welcome to episode 5 of the How Good Is Your Overwatch League team series. This time the spotlight is on the Toronto Defiant. While not necessarily in the elite tier, the way I sum up Toronto is a high upside dark horse potential team that also might just be okay. This team went through some very interesting changes over the last few months, so it should be fun to evaluate their roster and discuss their capabilities. Before getting into all that, let's refresh ourselves with a recap of how their offseason went. And right off the bat, it went the same way as, well, every other offseason that has gone for them. And by that I mean absolutely cleaning house by getting rid of every player except for Hisu in this case. Toronto just absolutely love to go down this route. They're never satisfied. New year, new them. It's just a shame that some of these players had to end up getting the boot because somebody like Sato, Lastro, and even Neist, they all did have their fair share of good performances. To see them get casted aside so easily is a bit disappointing, as they're certainly replaceable, but also talented at the same time. Everybody else that got the boot though, I don't think it's the hugest deal in the world. Michelle and Ansoon J were decent, but replaceable as well. Then you have Logix and Aspire, who just didn't fit in with a fully Korean environment, as well as Aztec, who just wasn't playing a lot to begin with. There was room for improvement, no doubt about it. So even if Toronto's management has kind of become a meme, a lot of these adjustments definitely weren't a terrible idea. Oh, and they also said goodbye to Coach Ho Chi Lee, who moved on to the Houston Outlaws. Considering that he only coached the team for a singular season, clearly his style did not mesh with KDG's system. But since he was the only coaching change that happened, I'd consider this to not be the hugest deal in the world. That rounds out the departures though. I know I went through that really quick and that it was a pretty hefty overhaul to say the least, but again, there's a really good chance that all of it was worth it, and there's also the fact that you can kind of turn a blind eye to a bunch of the releases. And the reason why this is the case though is because of what they got in return. Lastro and Ansoon J might have been a decent pairing, but Toronto arguably made huge upgrades with their backline by acquiring Twilight and rookie main support Chorong. This has high-level backline potential from day one written all over it. We already know what Twilight can do, first and foremost. He's been like a top 5 or better flex support really since 2019, and now he gets the opportunity to be a full-time starter again, so his value should arguably be even higher. He could easily be the best flex support in the game on any character. Lastro was an excellent asset last year, but it goes without saying that on paper, this is like an insta upgrade. Then you have main support on the other hand, and it's a very similar situation. Chorong may be a rookie, but he is being rated way higher out of contenders than Ansoon J was. Chorong is one of the top support prospects of the year, and his resume on Talent Esports is pretty impressive. Him, alongside Vigilante, established themselves as one of the top backlines in all of Korean contenders. Their consistency served as a really great bailout for a Talent team that consistently pushed O2 Blast to their limits in an attempt to become the best team in Korea. Along the way, Chorong showed off a great hero pool and a proactive playstyle time after time. Ansoon J, in my opinion, was pretty okay. Not amazing, but statistically he was pretty great, but he did lack the resourcefulness at times, as well as the dominant nature that's a bit more present with this new rookie. And that's what the Defiant ultimately lacked throughout all of 2021 from a lot of their positions. They need more star playmakers, not just decent guys, they want to go above and beyond. They desire people who not only get the job done statistically, but they also blow you away with their talents at all of the pivotal moments of a game. Chorong very well could be one of those guys. He's young and the future looks bright. That combined talent of Chorong plus Twilight offers so much promise. A superstar potential backline like this could lead the way for the rest of the roster. Their intelligence and above average playmaking will serve as a major pillar of stability. The only question is, will the rest of the team be able to keep up? It's tough to say. I think that Tank is looking pretty good at the very least though, as Mew still has a lot of untapped potential just waiting to come out. He showed off what he was capable of, and I'd say the second half of 2021 in particular, but there's still room to build upon that amazing performance. If Muse can improve his hero pool a little bit, he might take his game to a new level. With Coach KDG there being able to guide him, you have to feel pretty good about his chances of maybe taking that next step. Who you might not feel as confident about though is Hotba, as he's a turnoff for some people without a doubt. He's by no means that same player from 2019, but I think the good news is that he took a step back in the right direction in 2021. The consistency, I thought it was pretty on point for him in the Fusion. Could he have played better? Oh yeah, for sure, but improvement is still improvement, and what's cool about going to a 5v5 system is that Hoppa might do even better. He can play a more selfish style, kind of like what we saw in 2019 and 2020. There's no longer another tank to worry about defending or splitting the resources with. It's just him alone out there, so that means he'll be the one strictly getting all of the help. It's something that both him and his teammates could come to appreciate. Hoppa maybe isn't the most exciting pickup at off tank, but there's potential for him to thrive in Overwatch too. If not, he can at least just sit on the bench in favor of Muse, who might be the more promising prospect. Maybe others are going to find this tank line mediocre, but I believe that they could be decent enough to get the job done for like a potential playoff team. On the topic of getting the job done, the Defiant reorganized their DPS rotation by adding Although and Finale into the mix. Both could go down as underrated signings in theory. They provide a nice contrast between new and experienced. Although played in the Overwatch League during Season 3 on the London Spitfire, where he showed promise but was maybe still considered to be a little raw. But that was 2 years ago, and he's made some strides in his game since then. He worked hard to become a better flex DPS, and I think the results show. He definitely picked up on a thing or two playing for an elite team like O2 Blast, as well as a few other places during the last couple of years in Korean contenders. He doesn't feel like a ridiculous upgrade on the surface, but you never know what might happen. The dude's been working hard, and I think that having a fresh start on a better looking team compared to what he had on London might be useful for him. I don't mind seeing him get another chance to prove himself. Toronto are taking a worthwhile risk, especially since they aren't completely stuck with him if he isn't the best option in the world. Finale is right there if needed, and he's a rookie out of Uprising Academy with a similar hero pool. He was also a solid rotational piece and oftentimes was coming in to play things like Echo, Mei, and Reaper in North American contenders. Much like Although, he's an underrated prospect who could be developed into something relevant if the dominoes were to fall into place. Generally, these new DPS players offer Toronto a good number of compositional choices. If they want to play Rush or Tracer even, maybe Although gets the nod. If they're thinking Echo, maybe Pharah or Reaper, whatever it might be, then Finale gets the nod. They each have their own strengths which warrant both of them to potentially get some playtime. It's just a little unclear if either one of them can really develop into a strong enough partner for Hisu. Can either one of these guys rise to his level? That is the question that could prove to be a huge decider in how far Toronto can go. But at the least, there's two guys. You know, that's better than only one. Options are always good. Now it's just a matter of if that coaching staff can mold them into something. Speaking of the coaching staff, to wrap up their off-season acquisitions, Toronto added longtime assistant coach Moby Dick to their squad. Moby has been around the block, so to speak. He's coached the Fusion, Toronto back in 2019, NRG, and O2 Blast. This man knows what he's doing, and he is highly respected amongst his peers. He always manages to find a new job when he enters free agency, which goes to show you what kind of coach he is. Adding him into the mix gives the Defiant a good mix of experience with their coaching staff, as KDG, Yang1, and Moby all have major veteran presences. They're surely going to grab the respect of the older guys while also helping to develop the rookies on the roster. In my opinion, this might be one of the most underrated coaching groups in the entire league. That's about it in terms of the new pickups though, so when combining the new guys with what they already had, the Toronto Defiant, like I said at the beginning of the video, feel decent. They're no world beaters on paper, but in my opinion there's more of a guaranteed success compared to last year, and considering that they're coming off a 9-7 season, that's a good sign. How I see it is DPS and tank feel similar, but they have a noticeably stronger backline now, and I can't stress enough how good they could end up being. Lastro had his carry moments from time to time last year, no doubt, but now you're getting that level of play more frequently and arguably from both positions rather than just one. That alone gives me high hopes that Toronto might be pretty good. Strong support goes a long way, but it's not just that. I think that in general they have decent playmaking and flexibility. They can pretty much cover every hero in the game at a decent level. Love or hate them, every player on this team is pretty versatile. Additionally, Hisu and Twilight are going to lead the way as main playmakers, so to speak. They're the two starters you should expect to show up on a pretty consistent basis. Hisu in particular is somebody who can probably keep on elevating his team's level too. Give him a better team, and I think that Hisu could be a menace as shown by what it looked like when he was fully enabled on Philly back in the day. Toronto has a sick 1-2 punch going on, which is something they were missing at times previously. If you're trying to rebuild and get a reasonably competitive team going, it's very important to have those reliable stars, so that could instantly make them better. But the rookies, plus Muse and Although, could also be molded into stars, and I think that means that the ceiling of this team is relatively high. Development is going to be a huge aspect in how far they can go, and luckily for them, they possess some excellent development coaches to help them reach their goals. KDG, Yangwon, and Moby all have proven track records based on their history. So maybe Toronto fans, this will finally be the year where your young players are more likely to progress and have a smooth transition into a new system. The only aspect of the team I'm a bit curious about outside of like hot buzz and consistency is DPS. More specifically, how good will they be in a Tracer meta? Hisu showed off a good-looking Tracer in 2021, but the sample size is quite small. Although played a good bit of Tracer in contenders, but was nothing out of the ordinary. And with Finale, Victoria more so played the Tracer role on Uprising Academy, so that leaves us with a whole lot of questions, but not many answers. Will the duty be split among the three of these guys, or is there going to be a designated Tracer who can hold his own amongst the other deadly Tracers in the league? It seems like such a small thing on the surface, it's just one hero, but it also happens to be one of the most popular and high-impact characters in the entire game. Tracer's skill ceiling is arguably the highest of all heroes. You want somebody who knows what they're doing on her. Otherwise, you're in a situation where you have to pray that she's irrelevant enough for you to find success without her, and that is a gamble to say the least. This Defiant DPS rotation has a lot of talent and all the resources in the world to improve. If they can show good enough flexibility and they can play up to their strengths and find solutions for things like Tracer, maybe they'll be alright. This is the place with the most to prove, no doubt about it, but all it really takes is for Finale or Although to figure it out, and they very well could be in business. Everything else just heavily revolves around a bunch of what-ifs. If Hoppa plays well, if the young players develop, if Muse can continue where he left off last year, if the coaches do this, if the meta is like that, etc., etc. This idea of development and transitioning will forever follow them until they can prove themselves worthy. They've got a lot of conditions to meet, which is part of why I do not see this Defiant team as top tier. Toronto have a few guaranteed day one stars, plus a few other guys who have the upside to be at this level early on. But as of right now, they lack those true superstars. Twilight is like the only guy you'd consider to be at this level currently, or maybe Hisu. But that unfortunately is just not enough to make me think of them as a true contender. I'd say that playoffs are a possibility, no doubt about it, but on the surface they feel like a first or maybe second round exit at best, and my confidence in them to make a deep mid-season tournament run is not high either. With these ideas of expectations in mind, that gets me into my season projections. I've got Toronto finishing anywhere from 7th through 14th place in the overall standings, and 4th through 8th in the West. They're a classic good but not great looking team who I kind of view in a similar light to the Atlanta Reign. If they figure things out, I genuinely see them being some sort of playoff team who could beat a good number of rosters from the West. However, they might just be okay. They've got a superstar level backline arguably, but that might not be enough. Muse and Hotba need to pick up from last year, and there's gotta be a good secondary playmaker at flex DPS. When I compare Toronto to other teams that I rate higher, they just have less of that guaranteed star power right off the rip, and that could lead to some early season holes as they try to adjust. I need to reiterate though, I do think this coaching staff is really good, so there is a possibility that they figure some stuff out early on, and they're a lot better than we think. But it's probably not the best idea in the world to put all of your eggs in the Toronto basket when it comes to preseason outlooks like this, where we know little to no information behind the scenes. From a general position, the Toronto Defiant are a more flexible version of last year's squad, with more youth and potential star power. This is one team that would not be surprising to suddenly see end up taking off after a couple months of trial and error. This in theory could be the best product the franchise puts out to date. So at the very least, they could end up taking a step in the right direction this year, even if they're not ready to quite be title contenders. Hopefully they show enough promise to not have their entire roster get overhauled again. If they can take this season as a learning process, maybe do a bit better than anticipated, show some development, have some good performances, and perhaps make the playoffs, maybe the Defiant could have a bright future ahead of them. At least I hope that's the case for all my Toronto fans watching. Anyway, that just about does it for this team preview and offseason recap of the 2022 Toronto Defiant. Not a bad looking squad at all on the surface at least, but now I'm going to turn things over to you as I'd like to hear your opinion. Are you on the Toronto Defiant hopium, or do you once again think that they'll just be okay or irrelevant even? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video and you want to stay up to date on this series, like this video, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and hit the bell icon to receive notifications. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.